everybody, and welcome to the NextGen Planners podcast. My name is Amelia Hamilton, and I am the head of community here at NextGen Planners. And I have the pleasure of talking to a different, wonderful guest every single week about something to do with our area of financial planning. And today, I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by the brilliant Darren Day. Welcome to the podcast, Darren. How are you doing?
Morning, Amelia. Thanks. Good to be here. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Saying the days are getting lighter, and so things are getting better. Things are feeling like I think we're edging out of winter, and so that always makes me happy.
How wonderful that is as well.
Indeed.
Definitely.
So to kick things off then, we like to ask all of our guests what a day in the life looks like. So not necessarily your CV, your history, but where you are right now, day to day. What does a typical or I'm sure there's not an exact formula of what a typical day looks like, but by and large, what does the day in the life of Darren Day look like?
Easy for me. It is pretty consistent. So I get up at about 5:15, straight into yoga, some coffee, 15 pages, all that good stuff that we like to hear. Really, it's preparing for my children and my wife getting out of bed, and then it's just absolute chaos. They're brushing their hair and just clothes and things just go all over the place. So try and maintain some sort of order and getting my bits to set me up for the day out of the way, and trying to not let them wind me up quite so much. I then feed them, get them out of the door, and then I'll jump on my little bike and cycle 10 minutes down the road to the office. Good and boring. See what's come in overnight. A morning of either meetings, CPD, admin, like all the good financial planners do. I am quite conscious that I take a rather long lunch break because I like to go to our local gym and really get stuck into that for a good hour and a bit. Come back to sort of finish the day off. With regards to meetings and whatnot, clients that I see, they tend to like to see me in the afternoon, I think, because they probably want a leisurely morning. And then I get myself ready to go home and actually do some work. And that's where I welcome my family home to a home-cooked meal, hang out with the children in the evenings for a bit. We'll do some random stuff, reading books and doing their homework is all standard stuff. But they're both really into boxing at the moment and seeing how high they can kick in the air. So we do that for a bit, try not to break furniture, put them to bed, and then I'm pretty much wiped out about 9:30, 10 o'clock. So that's when I tend to go to bed. It's just a repeat the next day.
I mean, it sounds full on. Did you, from starting your time in financial planning, did you always carve out that time for yourself in the morning to kind of do yoga, to read, to get yourself in a good headspace for the day?
Yeah, great question. I found it was a good sort of coping strategy to deal with the sorts of things I found from a previous career when I was in the forces. Some of the jobs I did become a bit overwhelming, and managing people and wanting to do right by everybody. You do take your thoughts home with you, and into the following day. So I found that was pretty good to do so. I didn't spend a lot of time with my family back then, so I missed out. I missed out on a good sort of chunk of time with my children as they started to grow. Just to add context to that, they're 7 and 5. So at the time I was just coming out of the military, obviously shaved 3 years off of that. I wasn't really seeing them very much. So when I came home, that was what I was prepared to do, and I found that was the coping strategy to carry on. Really, yeah.
Definitely. I mean, and it sounds like when you can structure your day in a way like that you've really made time for all of the different components that make you feel fulfilled, so that you are then able to do well at your job and be there for clients and be there and show up in a way that is intentional and present, because you've kind of put the time in before and after with the other things in your life that are important to be investing in.
That's very true. And being in the position that I get to do that, was really what I was aiming for. Getting back to basics, that was something that I lost coming towards the latter end of my previous career, and thought, when I actually leave the military and I come into financial planning, it's more than just changing a job. It's, it's a way of life. It's putting some things to one side, taking on new things and being prepared to step fully into family life. And as much as there are many people listening to this, and just say, well, that's just what you have to do. That was something that I didn't have the privilege of knowing. And that's how I decided to do it, really. And it works well thus far, because it means I can just be present with everybody I come into contact with, which is great.
Yeah, definitely. And you bring up kind of your military roots, your military background, and I think this is something that people are really, really interested in knowing a bit more about, because it's we've talked before about how it actually is quite a good training ground for a lot of different careers, including this one, and that there's a lot of transferable skills that mean that you have a skill set, experience, knowledge that enable you to succeed and thrive in many different environments. So I guess my first question about it is, could you share a bit more about how being in the military has kind of shaped your approach to life and work, and what are some things that you think have really served you well for your life now, that you learned from that area of your life?
Yeah, sure. Well, going back to sort of secondary school, then starting there, I sort of fit into every social situation, but I wasn't really somebody that pushed limits. I didn't have any aspiration for further study. I had a strong work ethic. I think I had a part-time job instead of going to football practice. I wanted to earn some money. I was seeking independence from adults around me. I thought, well, those who've got a skilled trade, that's a good place to kick off, really. But do I really want to stay in my town, or do I want sort of a bit of sense of adventure so I could have that independence? So yeah, that did lead me to join the Royal Air Force. Crikey, 2002 that was now. And when I joined, I thought, yeah, a trade for me, please. I'd like to serve as an electrician. Had the entry qualifications to do that. That's what I went on to do. Of course, the environment and the people, instructors, the adults, etc., around me, something's obviously driving them. And when you're working in busy environments, particularly for me, I was fortunate that my first job post training was working on a busy air station. So a lot going on. When you see the aircraft take off, you're looking at it saying, it doesn't matter what I'm doing on this station, I contribute to that output. And of course, lots of highly driven people and that around me. So I thought, well, I could either accept what I do, because this is fine. Or do I really want to sort of start pushing myself more? Should I stop pigeonholing myself and thinking, just because I came from a certain background, I'm only worthy to do a certain thing? So I started to just sort of use that energy from others to just push and push. See what I was capable of doing. Fast forward a few years, I became a commissioned officer, and then that was when the challenge really started for me, because I was then in the spotlight of more senior leaders. I was responsible for people, for quite complex and sometimes dangerous outputs, like a lot of people who do serve in the military. They really place a lot of faith in you to to see what you're capable of and made of to do the job that you have to do. So as I came to sort of towards the end of that, I started to think, what's that sort of approach for me that really helps keep this thing going on? And from all the lessons and everything I'd learned, good and bad, I kind of come up with this approach with just try and be better than the person I was yesterday, because that keeps me humble, that keeps me committed, and just drives me forward to do what I was most passionate about. And it wasn't necessarily fixing things. It was helping to change people's mindsets, so then they put themselves in a position feeling that they're capable and confident enough to do a bit more with their lives as well. That's about it, really.
Yeah. Well, yeah, just a small
Long
thing.
answer.
We'll just, yeah, that's all. No, amazing. And talking about that as a foundation for where you are now, I can't imagine a kind of better training ground for that discipline. And you can so clearly see how that has led you to construct your day-to-day life in a way that means that you are able to show up and be the best possible version of yourself, and continue to do that day in, day out, rather than it just lasting. I might set a very good intention to wake up at a certain time and do some exercise, but oftentimes that's not going to be consistent. But coming from a background like that, it's you set an intention and you make it happen, and you make sure that that you have the discipline and it's built in you that's how you're going to continue to do things. What advice then, I guess, do you have for people, including myself, that of all that incredible experience, how do you stay focused and disciplined in setting an intention and making that happen?
It's accountability, really. So if not to do it for yourself, which ultimately, that does help you inevitably get ahead with what you're doing, depending on what that goal is. Tell somebody about it and ask them to be accountable to you. Or if you're in the fortunate position, if you're in a position that you're married or you have children, and you think, well, actually, I want to do that for another person, or for a loved one. Perhaps that's what I should have said, a loved one, because then they notice the change in you. I mean, certainly for me, I feel being responsible for two young girls in the modern world, is a bit of a scary thing. I want to show them what a guy is a force for good. Somebody who just wants to see them, safe, and and make good choices within their lives. See that example from me. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is lead by example for what you do. By showing yourself you can do it, have the intent to show others instead.
Yeah, great advice. And another question before we kind of move on to a slightly different topic, regarding the military. What would you say to people who are leaving the forces and looking for a different opportunity and think that financial planning might be a route that they could take? And likewise, what would you say to potential employers, companies who might be interested in kind of broadening their search and not perhaps looking at someone who has had the traditional, if there is, you can even call it that, route into financial planning? So the two sides of that coin.
I'd say, first of all, if particularly for those who've been in positions of managing people and they do care about people, and do possess, I'd say, high levels of empathy, it is a great thing to get into. The interesting, of course, personal finance. Be able to structure your life in a certain way that you can be an example to others to do that as well is sincerely going to help. The qualifications, that as important as they are to have, that is something that can be done. Good employers are clearly going to take you as a blank canvas within this profession, and obviously add those bits and pieces, those building blocks to you to sort of build you up into what you do. If that answers that side of it. I'd say if you were an employer and you were considering, or if I put myself in the shoes of perhaps being an employer, would I recruit somebody from the armed forces? Yes, I would, absolutely. For those attributes of the commitment and the integrity and the selflessness, they're all good traits that I see in many other people that I've worked alongside over the years. That's certainly something I'd look for. But as an employer as well, people from the forces will keep you on your toes. They will be self-assured, as I felt that I've been over these last few years. They can operate without sort of management and oversight, but I still think it's good, just as like with anybody else, to provide that oversight and that encouragement, steer them towards a common goal. Have a strapline within the company that everybody can resonate around to achieve. You'll find that somebody you've recruited from the forces will really be at the front foot of helping you do that.
That's really interesting. I think there's so much that us civilians don't understand about what a life in the forces actually looks like, and what characteristics it takes to be successful in that kind of environment. So yeah, thank you for sharing those insights there. And so my next question then, talking more about you specifically and you in financial planning.
Yeah.
There's a particular milestone for you this year. You're turning 40, and you have packed in quite a lot into those years. And you're also on your 3-year anniversary in financial planning.
Mm.
So I guess just a moment to ask you, kind of reflecting on that journey where you are now. How are you feeling about that, and how are you feeling about where you are at the moment?
Yeah, sure. The age side of things, so in my 39th year, went down the roads of, oh, I think I'd like to be as fit and look as I did when I was 21. How do I achieve that? How do I achieve that on the extreme? I did this 30-day diet challenge, and as a result of that, there were lots of positives to that, and it did teach me a lot. But I thought, no, that's not really a mindset to take forward. I've got to embrace the fact that, yeah, okay, now I am 40. Don't necessarily feel old, but compared to some university leavers and some people I do see in the gym, I think, yeah, I am, old enough to be their dad. One has to acknowledge that, and that's fine. Being older, though, and one thing I find in particular, post sort of 3 years as well, and now that sort of comes into play, is I feel very self-assured that I'm in the place that I want to be, doing what I want to do, helping people, those that I want to help, and learning that saying the word no, for example, as well, is okay, as long as you follow up with, but I can do this instead. So maturing, I guess, is never a bad thing. It's not something I'd give any due consideration. Certainly my late 20s or early 30s, but they were quite chaotic years compared to how life is for me now. So I'd say, yeah, I'm quite happy, just so long as I don't wake up tomorrow and find myself being 50. I want to get and enjoy this decade. Certainly put the 30s behind me, because that's where I went through the most change. And it's like, yeah, appreciate that from my younger self, but yeah, let's move on. Let's get turn 40.
Yeah, I've heard 40s is the best decade. I've heard that that's what a lot of people say, because like you said, you've got to a point where you understand yourself, and you've got to a point where you are feeling good and know what you want, hopefully. But I guess, in the grand scheme of things, especially in this profession, you're incredibly young. This profession is an aging one, and one where the majority of people are not about to turn 40. They might be turning a substantially older decade in the next year or so. How do you feel about that position, where you're kind of balancing the fact of, like, when you're going through exams, you might be alongside people who are kind of university leavers, but actually in this profession, you're one of the young ones. You're someone who's got a hugely long career and road ahead of you, should you want it. How do you feel about kind of that landscape?
I guess in a way, this has just struck me that I feel as if I'm kind of a bridge, and that I feel I understand those that are 10, 15 years younger than me. I certainly feel that I understand people that are 15, 20, 25 years older than me. So perhaps if there's a little bit of a disconnect between those wayward years between the two, then I could be that effective bridge in the middle, perhaps, to translate the information from the older generation to the younger
Yeah.
generation, and equally learn wonderful things from each along the way. I like the wisdom of the older generation, and I like now technologically competent and with fresh ideas, want for change of the younger generation as well, and how each challenge the other two. So yeah, I do feel like I'm sort of in the middle, but in a good way.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that's a really important thing to kind of bring up in terms of clients, because you might be dealing with your clients and then their children, and perhaps even their grandchildren as well. And so the way that you need to be able to um, feel connected to these different people might be different along the way. And so meeting such a different span of people, what have you learned about yourself, or engaging with clients in a different way? What are some things that you've taken from that?
I think with regards to the clients that I deal with, and they are predominantly older,
Hmm.
I learn much more from them than I think that they learn from me. A lot of the time they're coming in for self-assurance that things are going okay and they're making the right decisions, which is fine. But when I sort of say, I will structure my meetings with a list, and then just have a bit of a fun and a play to say, oh, we've done that agenda item now, that agenda item now. But I always like a big sort of introduction and quite a large proportion of an annual meeting to them to tell me what's going on. And then I just add like little follow-up questions just to get the broad picture and to see how they react to certain questions as well. And yeah, I guess what I've learned from them really is it helps reaffirm to me the sort of force for good that I want to be as I get older, what sort of parent I want to be, grandparent I want to be, because you see these examples and you think, I kind of want to, I like that. You're onto something there. Please tell me a little bit more about that. I kind of do it for a bit of self-interest, just not only to want to know what is ticking in that person's mind, but also just to take more wisdom to pass on to those who maybe don't have it or are seeking something a little bit more for their annual review, or in other circles of life where people are saying, give me advice for this. Well, I heard someone say that and it worked well for them. Perhaps try that.
Yeah.
Just to feel
And
useful, essentially.
yeah, definitely. And the way, you're talking about engaging with your clients, you're hinting at a lot of those, I was going to say soft skills, but I've recently been told that's not what I should be saying anymore. It should be intangible skills,
Oh,
because
really?
obviously soft makes it feel not important or less than, and it's not. Yes, exactly. When really they're some of the hardest things that you can employ, active listening. Yeah, asking questions, being able to read non-verbal cues. It's not, quantifiable in any way. How have you kind of gone about investing in those set of skills, and how has your approach changed over the last 3 years in how you're delivering these intangible skills?
I came into the profession already possessing them, and that's not to big myself up. My final 3 years within the military was working in an environment where I had people from across the spectrum of the forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines work for me, and they were doing a job for me I didn't entirely understand, and I thought, so what kind of value can I add? Because I'm not a specialist; they're the specialists. But if I'm overseeing their outputs, what can I do for them? Because I could see a lot of them had gone through the experiences of Afghanistan and Iraq, have perhaps done some things that they question the validity of and why they've done them. And I spent a lot of time helping to build people up. A lot of upset, a lot of discord between people in the team. I set myself to task to try and help repair people, and set them up for the future as well. So valuable amount of experience from that, which is ultimately what led me to come into this profession anyway. I've done things in the past